Hello and welcome back to the daily NFT market health update. Let me just post the links. And here we go. Right. So, welcome back to the daily NFT market health analysis with me, Daniel Tenner, aka Swombat, where we look at the data of what's happening in the market rather than just the vibes, and we try and figure out what the hell is going on, where is it going, what's it about to do, what has it done as well. And you know, we base that on data rather than just like what things feel like, and data that we try to sort of organize in such a way that is useful to us. Hello, Anastas. Now, so let's go straight into it. So let's look at today. It's looking pretty good. You know, this is a nice looking curve. Of course, we're going to look into the underlying data there as well and find that, well, you know, and if we're going to compare it to the new top 10 as well and find that maybe it's not quite as optimistic as it looks here, but I think it's still a relatively optimistic picture. Similarly for the Zeneca Old Index, a lot of this is driven by pudgy penguins, basically, which is not a bad thing. So this index is not invalid. It's just also will show us the index chart without the Zeneca Old, so without the top 10, the old top 10, which is a little bit less optimistic but still quite decent. Zeneca New is looking all right as well. As we'll see in context, it's not like, you know, as amazing as it looks on the really short-term chart, but it's still pretty decent. As for the Women-Led Projects Index, unfortunately, when it was here yesterday, I said I want to see it sort of stick around here and build up rather than just collapse back down, because it's done this before several times, and unfortunately, it's collapsed back down. So much for that one. No luck there. If we look at the bar charts, we can see why I'm being a bit suspicious of the so-called old top 10. And by the way, I'm hoping that by tomorrow I might be able to do the report on the new top 10 and just ditch this old top 10 entirely. I'm really almost there with the dynamic indices. We can see that right now this old top 10 is largely driven by this yellow project there is pudgy penguins, and it's there is also an increase in activity in other projects, but it's definitely not as marked without the pudgy penguins. I mean, this is Cool Cats, this green thing there. So there's been a bunch of other things that also are pumping, but a lot of the steady volume of the last few days is Cool Cats, as is pudgy penguins. Zeneca Old has a bit more of a variety of projects that are pumping. Zeneca New, it's driven by spikes of so there's this orange project here, there's this green project here, this white project here, but that's okay. So long as it's not the same, just one spike that's falsifying the index, I'm okay with that, and I don't see that as bad, misleading data. None of it is bad data, but I don't see it as misleading so long as it's not just a single project, because in a bull market you'll get random pumps of projects as they release some news and their sales go up, usually for one or two of these bars, and then they kind of go back down as the news hype kind of dies down. And then finally, the Women-Led Projects Index there, we can see, oops, this big gap here. It was building up a little bit here and then it's kind of dropped. And it's kind of risen again in the last 4-hour candle, so maybe it's heading back up. But you know, I'm very skeptical with that index, and I want to see evidence before I call it anything other than just a disaster at the moment. So let's have a look at the top 10. We can see here, as we saw on the short-term charts, there is this nice rise, which if we're looking at this chart, you know, we're in this kind of channel going up. It's looking good. It's heading towards a bull market. The red line, which is the prices, is also heading up. Again, worth reiterating that the price line is heading up at the same rate as the volume, so there is no gap, and unfortunately the volume doesn't appear to give us much of a leading indicator about the price of the top 10. I still believe there is value in looking at this because the top 10 will lead other projects, will lead the rest of the market and indicate to us what is going to happen across the rest of the market. But in terms of the projects here themselves, the relationship is too close and we can't really act on this to catch the price rises before they happen. That was the case back in December, which like we can see here, like it started rising and then later on the prices started rising. That is not the case now. The price rises and the volume rises are in sync, and really there's hardly any gap between the two. So unfortunately that information is not as useful as it was before, but at least we know it. If we compare to the new top 10, you can see there that there's still like this, like it's still an uptrend. It's not as marked as on the other one. It's still kind of in this channel, but just in the other one, the upper channel is more like here. So here it's a little bit less optimistic. It's currently doing a bit of a retracement. Volumes are a little bit lower. This also matches actually what other people who are looking at the sort of OpenSea data are noticing, that there's been a drop in volume in the last day. And so this does feel like a more accurate representation of what's going on in the market than this one, which I think is a bit misleading because of all the Pudgy Penguins activity, which is great for Pudgy Penguins, by the way. Like, you know, great on them that they're getting all this healthy trading activity. Their floor price is rising, people are buying and so on because they're because of the change of leadership. That's good. Like, let's hope the new leadership does really great things with the project. I'm curious to see what they're going to do. But yeah, so if we look at the new top 10, it's not as optimistic, but like if it consolidates here and then sort of goes back up, which I imagine it might well do, that's not too bad, and that continues a kind of upward trend. Like roughly you can see like both the blue line, the 7-day SMA, and the green line are sort of generally trending upwards, and we like to see that because that leads us eventually, if it keeps on trending upwards for a few weeks, it leads us to a really healthy bull market where volumes are just really solid and not just hype driven, but just there's a lot of trading going on because there's a lot of people who are interested in the market. If we look at the Zeneca Old Index, that one is doing also rather well, and especially since we're going to drop the old top 10 soon, I think it's worth also just accepting that this is quite a good looking chart, and as an index it is recovering. I've got also the Zeneca Old without the top 10 that is looking a little bit less optimistic, but is it the most relevant view? I don't know. Like they're both useful to know. And even this one is still above the 30-day SMA, and while it's consolidating here, it's nevertheless consolidating, you know, above the 30-day SMA and with a kind of uptrend in volume, and it's had a very sharp rise here. So even without the top 10 and the Pudgy Penguins effect, it's still a fairly good looking index. And obviously with the top 10 and the Pudgy Penguins index, it's looking rather nice. It's actually now at volumes that it was at during the bear market of October, November, December, which, as I was saying yesterday, you know, we don't know whether we're going to recover steady volumes up here ever. It could be that because a number of projects in this index have died since then, we're never going to get back to this kind of volumes on a, like, you know, on a steady basis. So this could be the new bull market level, based on the way this index is constructed, because it doesn't get renewed and refreshed with newer projects. Which is why the dynamic indices that I'm building are going to be helpful, because they're going to be a bit more even, in that we'd expect if the set of projects, if we have the relevant set of projects here, and then we have the relevant set of projects here, we'd expect at least similar volumes here as here, if they're equivalently active. And if not, then that does mean that actually the overall activity of the market is trending down, which we can't really say based on this chart. We can only say that the overall level of activity across these projects is down, not necessarily across the whole market. And there's a lot of projects that aren't in the Zeneca Old Index, of course. I also got this chart. That's the Zeneca Old without top 10 in the 90-day view. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if we want to spend much time on that. It just shows that, like, it does show that, you know, it's easy to see something as really optimistic when you have a very narrow view of it. When you can only see yesterday to today, and or even just like this is 45 days, and still, as soon as you switch to the 90-day view, you can see that in context, well, it's not that great, and it's still a kind of downtrend going on here. We're not quite out yet, and there's a Zeneca Old without top 10. Which I think is a really important point to make, and I really appreciate the fact that other people are doing charts as well, right, or stats like market analysis as well. But one thing I find always a little bit bothersome about the views that they take is they're looking at the floor price changes from day to day, and that feels like such a short-term view. It's like if you're only looking at this area, like practically looking at six of those dots, and you're saying, oh, the market is down, or you're looking here and you're like, oh, the market is up, like it's an amazing day. Or like, you know, let's say you catch this one and you're like, oh my god, this has been an amazing day for the market. And yes, it has been an amazing day, but you kind of need to see this in context. Has it been an amazing day when you take on this chart? Well, it's still a good day, yeah, but like in context of just recovering stuff that we lost over the last couple of weeks. And when you look at it in a even longer period, you know, this is not like, yeah, we're not yet in an uptrend. We look like we've reversed the downtrend, but you know, there's still a lot of uncertainty there. And yeah, I think it's important to look at the longer perspective as well, not just sort of nose against the grindstone, just what happened in the last day, which a lot of, I think, those market analysis approaches do, which is why I do this, so I can have a longer perspective. Talking about longer perspectives, here's the Zeneca New Index, and there we see, like, it's similarly to it's actually surprisingly similar to like if we look at this 90-day chart here and this 90-day chart here, they're actually looking fairly similar. There's also this kind of downtrend here, which makes sense, you know, back when Zeneca Old and Zeneca New were created as indices from the data sets that Zeneca gathered. They were very different because some of them were the projects created in the first half of 2021, or like, you know, until August 2021, and the others were projects created a bit later, and that was very recent. Now these are both projects created basically in the early to late summer of 2021, and it's normal that they would on the whole follow a fairly similar curve. Because they're not that different now, which is why, again, I need to update the indices, and that is coming soon, very soon. Like, at least the top 10 should be updated by tomorrow, and then I'll start working on the other dynamic indices, like right away, basically. Let's have one more index, which is actually one of the more recent ones, because that's based on the dataset gathered by Alice and Claire a couple of months ago, so that's actually much more fresh. And this is, well, yeah, as I said, I was hoping yesterday that it would consolidate, or like, you know, at least consolidate here before going up. The worst case scenario is going to collapse back down and go back into the downtrend. Well, I mean, you know, we're still in this downtrend. I'm not calling this a change of trend at all. If you want to be really optimistic, you might say, oh, like here we made a lower low and here we haven't. Yeah, I mean, that's really grasping at straws, I think. And it's very possible that this now goes like this and then makes a lower low. So, you know, it's because it did sort of look like it was changing trend. It did pop like and hit the 30-day SMA. So, you know, it could go back down. So yeah, so that's for the women-led projects index. Obviously, some projects inside here are going to be doing well and some are not. But on the whole, on the average, we can see that, you know, since late January, there is a downtrend in price across these projects. There is a downtrend in volume. It's not looking great for these projects. And that's the reality. As much as I want it to be different, I'd rather know what is than just wish the market to go the way that I want it to go. Which, yeah, is is why we look at data, so that we get a sense of what's actually happening rather than what we wish to see happening. I'm getting towards the end of the questions, so if you or the end of the charts, 15 minutes in. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them. Generally, feel free to ask them at any time anyway. If you're a regular listener, like, next time, if you have a question, start typing it early on, and I can start to answer, I can start to think about it while I'm doing the charts as well. It can even help me a little bit. If we have a quick look at crypto while I'm waiting for some questions to come up, it's being somewhat upbeat and yet not too interesting. So that's cool. Like, sort of steady rise with a bit of uncertainty. That's nice. It would be interesting to know how many ETH you started with at the beginning 6 months ago. I didn't count exactly, and unfortunately the P&L tools to try and figure out how much I've made and how much I've invested are pretty awful. I did show yesterday this spreadsheet, if I can find it here, which is based on like prices 2 days ago. So crypto covenant has gone down a little bit and stuff. I definitely did not start with 58 ETH, which is the value of my portfolio at the moment. Neither did my wife start with 36.9 or 37 ETH. So I'd guess that in total I might have put probably about 10 to 20,000 pounds into NFTs, I would guess, which exactly how, like, I didn't, as I said, I didn't count exactly. And I will need to for my taxes. But let's say it's 20,000 pounds times 1.5 for dollars or thereabouts. So let's say it's about 10 ETH or so. So like a 5-6x return, I think, but the tax calculation will tell me that eventually once the tax tools actually get good enough to do this. When are we renaming Zenek and U to Swombat index? Yeah, I mean soon. Like once I have the ability to generate those dynamic indices. I mean, what I'm thinking of. Oh yeah, let's have a look at the Swombat index actually while we're talking. What I'm thinking of is there will be all sorts of different ways to slice and dice this stuff. I mean, the first one is to replace the top 10 with a dynamic top 10. And actually, like if you look here, you can see where that's how close I am. I've generated the SQL that creates a view that basically it's like a fake table that has all the projects within the time spans that I want them, so that it only includes the transfer events that I need to, like the sale events that I need to look at. And so I can create any number of these views that have any arrangement of projects together and then build an index based on that really easily. And the first one is going to be the new top 10, which will be basically the old top 10. And then as you can see here, you can see if I show you anyway, that, for example, Pudgy Penguins will stop being counted on 1st of January. And instead, on 1st of January of 2022, there will be, what replaces it? World of Women NFTs will replace it on 1st of January 2022. Could go earlier, but I had to pick some arbitrary date to do that. Cyberkongs here will stop being relevant, will stop being counted in the index on 15th of January, and instead Doodles will replace it on 15th of January, and so on. There's each of the projects I've set up, the ones that are no longer in the top 10 according to this, I've set up an end date and replace them with these projects in order of how old they are. So World of Women happened to be the oldest one with 8 months, so I sliced that one in earlier. But that's just one way to slice it. What I can do as well is do a kind of top 50. Although there is a question, there of because the changes in this range are much more frequent. Like you can see, this just went up by 980. Like Pudgy Penguins, obviously, it's had lots of activity. It was a few days ago, it was below 50. Now it's above 50. How often do I update and change and stuff? I can just make, I guess, a weekly update and just have the top 50 for this week. I will probably still ignore recent projects, or maybe I can have an index with recent projects and without. But I think at first I'll just ignore projects that are less than 2 months old, because I think they have unrealistic activity that early, and it often dies down. Like, you know, many projects unfortunately have a kind of price curve that, like, after a minute goes like this, and then it sort of like goes like this, and then like this, and like this, and it sort of goes down. And as that happens, the project relevance is basically dying, even if it had a lot of hype at the beginning. And 2 months later, if that's the shape of the project, it ends up looking like this. And 2 months later, we're here. And at that point, that project is no longer actually worth looking at. I don't know whether that will happen with World of Women Galaxies or Invisible Friends or any of those other projects that have been really hyped. But I've seen it happen with other projects that were super hyped before, that then went and kind of dropped in relevance over time as their prices went down, and like nothing really that happened that much with them. So that's why I want to filter out those more recent projects. But yeah, so I can have a top 50. I can also tag those projects with things like women-led projects, or the metaverse land projects, or like, and some of them are easy to tag, some of them are harder to tag. I'll do my best, but basically there's also different ways I can tag it. I can also slice them by when they were started, so we could see the performance of the top 50 most relevant projects started in 2021 versus the top 50 most relevant projects started in 2022, and see how they perform against each other. And that would be like another index that I can do dynamically, and those will no longer be Zeneca old, Zeneca new, etc. At that point, I will probably drop those naming conventions, and will I call them the Swombat index? I don't know. There would be Swombat indexes, basically, or indices. So probably they deserve to have some kind of name of that sort. Does anyone have any other questions? I'm obviously quite excited about getting this out. I'm tired of having to, like, I hate having to, like, you know, have an old top 10 and a new top 10, like, you know, have two charts to look at to see the same data. It's just annoying. And I'd rather have one chart that I believe is the right data and just look at that, rather than say, oh, it's important to have multiple views and to realize that all these views are arbitrary. But it's also important, I think, to pick a view that you think is the most relevant. How much time each day do you put into NFTs? That depends. I try to put as much as I can into NFTs, but not at the expense of stuff to do, like stuff that I want to do with my life. Right now I'm doing a kind of exercise program that requires me to eat and cook and exercise a lot, and so that's taking up a pile of my time. This weekend, you know, I had a bunch of stuff going on, and so I did that. Ideally, like, I mean, this is what I want to do, except when I want to do something else more. So on average, well, I spend at least a couple of hours around lunchtime to do the update and the live stream. I usually manage to spend a good 2-3 hours doing some coding as well. And then there's another hour or two doing various bits of reading. Sometimes I write a thread that can take an hour or two. If I make a video, that can easily take me the whole afternoon. So it varies. At least I spend 2 hours a day. The most I've done would probably be like spending, I don't know, 12 hours in a day, or more if I was on Discord and stuff for a lot of time after that. Or like, you know, yeah, if I was on Discord and stuff. Probably on average, between 4 and 6 hours, something like that. It's like closer to 4 hours on average right now because of that exercise program, which is just taking up a lot of time. But hopefully that will finish at some point. I mean, I know it will. It's got an endpoint. And And then there's going to be holidays and stuff that take time out, and that's okay. That's in fact, it's good. Like, you need to do other things than just NFTs in your life, I think. Any other questions? I'll put the music back on. It always draws the questions. It's magic music. I need to ping my friend and ask him to post, to actually record this thing. He said he would. So there should be new music, but we just don't have it yet. It's a bit galling because it actually just takes him literally 5 minutes to record 5 minutes of this, because he's that good at improvising. So I'll text him after this and say, hey, where's my new music? So, I guess we're getting to the end of the questions. And that's cool. We're 26 minutes in. Thank you very much for dialing in. Thank you for listening later. If you're listening later, have a lovely day if this is your morning. Have a lovely night if this is your evening. Have a lovely time, whatever time it is. And I hope to see you tomorrow for more stats fun. And hopefully tomorrow with just one top 10 instead of two. Just one top 10. Come on, I can do it. All right. Take care. Have a lovely day and see you tomorrow. Bye.